Thank you for tuning in to Love Kills. This is an audiobook format read to you by Bradley Dahlberg in 2024. Love Kills by Hank Harrison, The Assassination of Kurt Cobain. We are finally up to chapter 12 here. Read 6 chapters this evening, and they just keep getting longer and longer, so I don't know if I'll be able to keep up the steam every night, but definitely be sure to check along and go along with us here. So Whistling Dixie at chapter 12. I'd rather be hated for who I am than loved for what I'm not. Looking back on it, one could call the trip to and from New York a harebrained scheme. We asserted our rights to raise our baby. We grabbed her up, got a car from a delivery service, joined a corps, Congress on the Radical Equality, and the SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And we set out our register voters in the South. We didn't register a single voter in the long run. We didn't stay long enough, but we got more than one eyeful. We drove a beige Nash Rambler en route to Queens. Our license plate displayed a dreaded orange and blue of the Yankees carpetbaggers, so south of the Mason-Dixon line we were hog meat. We didn't know the degree of the peril that we were facing. I assure you, I would not have gone anywhere near the South with my kid in those days if I had known how dangerous it was. But we figured that we were safe as a family. We figured the war between the North and the South was just some kind of fictional barleycorn. We were from California, not New York. We figured people would know we were cool. Besides, we didn't have Yankee accents. It didn't dawn on me that our California accents probably triggered an even worse enmity in the Southerners. We were just plain wearing the wrong colors in the enemy territory. The Corps and the SNCC buttons didn't help. Courtney was bundled up and strapped into a car basket in the back seat, and she slept most of the way. Once we got to Mississippi, it didn't take long to figure we should maybe be heading back up north near Jackson. We were held up for a routine check at a toll booth, and the porcelain doll taker said, "What you'll doin' in dese pants?" "None of your damned business," Linda shouted. This didn't help. Sounded like something Courtney would say. The toll taker puffed up like a beet on steroids and started reaching for a pick handle, the local weapon of choice when a shotgun is not available. I jammed the far too luxurious Rambler into power and slid and peeled the hell out, but not before almost losing my left arm. The slimy gent reached out and grabbed my wrist, and I tossed coins at him. The sweat on his grubby paw saved us. We didn't have money to spare. The 1,000 was half gone already, and we still hadn't hit the East Coast. But I did manage to acquire 2 Civil War guns from a college friend from San Francisco State University who happened to be visiting his family in Muskogee, Oklahoma. One of them was an attic quality Spencer carbine produced for the North in 1864. It must have been picked up off the battlefield, maybe even Gettysburg. This thing came with its original S7-shot magazine stored in the butt. Load on Sunday, shoot all week. I knew I could sell the 2 very clean Civil War muskets when we got to New York, but I had no idea how much they were really worth. 10 grand now, maybe 20, 200 clams. What a joke. Decades later, I was told if we had been caught in Mississippi with the guns of any kind and a New York license plate, we might have been shot on the spot. Bottom line, the South was still segregated. That's the summer I saw my first colored water fountain. Linda thought the sign etched in stone meant that the orange and green water would come out of it, but we knew the truth. Slavery was still alive in Mississippi, MISSI, SSIPPI, and Alabama. She was aghast when I explained that what colored meant. My stomach turned. Courtney remained angelic. We decided to make it to New Orleans and turn up toward the Valdosta and the Coffee Pot and 2 Egg in Savannah. We loved Savannah. Who doesn't? It reminded us of San Francisco more than the N.O., New Orleans to be exact. But Savannah was a bit run down in those days, and the hotels were too expensive. We slept in the car that night and drove north the next morning. We made it to Washington, D.C. for a day and then flipped to New York because I knew I could drive a cab in the Big Apple. I had done it before in 1962, and besides, we had to get a car to Queens ASAP. By the time I got back east via New Orleans, a publishing gig fell through, so I took a driving a cab. People seemed astonished when I tell them that I drove a cab in Manhattan, but if you learn to drive in San Francisco, you can drive anywhere. We were just on vacation, on the road, like Kerouac and Cassidy, only married. Come to find out decades later, after a while, it seemed like Jack and Neil were married. Anyway, we knew we would eventually lead back to California. I was just asserting my desire to make my choices for my family. But Linda's folks thought that we ran away. Worse, they thought I kidnapped Linda and the baby against their will, and my mom and dad, who hadn't spoke to one another for over a few centuries, assured the Reeses this was not the case, but Linda's folks took little solace. In a panic, unbeknownst to us, Jack Reese hired the most expensive detective agency in New York to track us down. Our freedom didn't last long. We never did tell him about our voter registration gig and toll booth ordeal. The plan was supposed to work like greased lightning. You can't burp into the Big Apple and land a taxi job just because you have to know every alley and sewer in the town just to get back to hack a license or even drive under somebody else's medallion. So what do you do to go to be an executive car delivery system? Pay a deposit and wait for a car to the West Coast or maybe Reno? I copped a big one on the first day. Leather-lined black Buick town car, perfect for us as a moneymaker in New York. The plan was to get the car and spend a leisurely 2 weeks in Manhattan hiring out an unlicensed town car in the daytime and seeing the sights at night. It even had tinted windows. The town car scam exploited the gray area in New York and the economy. The cops are always on alert for gypsy cabs, unlicensed limousine drivers in the most big cities, and specialized vehicle must be registered both in the state and the city. With the town car gig, all you have to do is get a big fancy clean car, go out to the airport, bribe the dispatcher, who is always standing there with his hand out, and wait for the special limo line. This could work in any big town, but New York, it's a gold mine. Slip the dude the appropriate funds in the airport and you're in for a fat morning. The Roadmaster idea hit a snag. As soon as we popped in at the Manhattan Car Agency, we were flagged by a security computer. The credit check came when Jack Reese's All Points Bulletin and agency shot down the deal. We were now fugitives, and we ran out of the building thinking that we might get busted right then and there. Now the problem was immense. We lost our deposit, the dream Buick bubble exploded, and as did the hope of the luxury car agency. The second agency was far more forthcoming. They told me point blank, "You're wanted in San Francisco by your father-in-law, and we can't let you have that car." I was infuriated. Jack's panic put us into a far more danger. Now I had to think fast. I was determined to pull my family through this predicament just to prove that I could do it. Stupid attitude? Yes, of course. But I thought I was cool. And after... we were on an extended vacation. We were both 21 and we were legally married. Kurt must have felt the same way when Francis was taken away. I saw Linda swing the baby on the A-train platform, almost as if she wanted to toss the kid on the tracks. But I didn't understand what was going on at the time. She hated Courtney, the spawn of the only pagan she ever married. The classifieds led us to our decommissioned taxi in Hicksville, Long Island. This thing was orange and red and had medallions torn off and a fare panel sprayed over, but the dome light was still worked, and I drove a cab as a gypsy car for about a week and made a bank. See, baby, not to worry. It's going to be all right. We did it. The trip wasn't a total bust. We still got to see all the museums and all the haunts, and Courtney stayed healthy. Everybody loved her wherever we went, and we picked up fares in heavy traffic. Linda chatted to the fares about the baby as I drove. I cut the prices in half to the people always tipped large, and I was after all a real smooth driver. Gas for the rig was only 70 cents per gallon in those days, and by the time we were ready to pack it in, I had accumulated about $500 in small bills, and sold the Spencer carbine, which turned out to be a fabulous collectible, and on the deal we were able to spend one night in the Allegheny before deciding to move downtown to the East Village to see Bob Dylan. Even in those days, the small club action was at the Alphabet City, between the Avenue A and B near St. Mark's Square, the epicenter of what was to be the little jazz club known as Five Spot. The club had to be physically linked to the bathhouse. The baths were notoriously gay lunatic asylums, and the club was clean and the crowd was hip. Our last night in Manhattan we spent at the Valencia Hotel, now known as St. Mark's Hotel, and our room was on the mezzanine floor, just above the Five Spot. Around midnight we heard Charlie Mingus playing. Around midnight, directly beneath our room, I put my ear to the floor, and drifted in, listening to the strains of the Goodbye Porky Pie Hat. Through the floorboards, we had to get back to San Francisco. And that's the end of chapter 12. Don't forget to stay tuned, like, share, and subscribe. This is Bradley Dahlberg reading to you Hank Harrison's Love Kills, the Assassination of Kurt Cobain. I'll be definitely reading more, and I hope this keeps you guys going. Don't forget to comment down below if you love this kind of true crime content.